This kind of flips the equation on its head, because the Speiro Way says that instead of saying I'm going to sell a certain amount and get a certain amount of revenue, and I'm going to spend what I spend on fixed costs and cost of goods sold, and I'm going to see what I'm left with, and hopefully I have a profit. This flips it on its head, and it says, actually take the profit part of the equation and put it over on the left side of the equal sign and say, revenue minus profits equals expenses.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vertical Business Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how to guarantee, or if not guarantee, come close to guaranteeing you can pull a profit out of your business. We have a home-baked philosophy about how to allocate cash in a way that will allow you to do this regardless of whether you think you're in a position to pull a profit or not. By the end of the episode today, you're going to feel a little more confident about doing so. In addition, in typical vertical business fashion and close to our hearts, Jeff and I's, this also allows you to then do whatever you please with those profits that you're pulling out of your business, and that allows you to give regardless of your cash position out of your business as well. So that's going to be the topic today.
Yeah.
Going to kick it off, Jeff.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, really good. I love this topic. I love it because
so do I.
It's super practical. It's not hard. You don't have to go to become a CPA to get this done. And yet it does exactly what you're saying. It really positions your business and your finances in such a way that and it reshapes how you think about your business and how you set the finances up to become profitable. And obviously for us, the goal of profitability, a big part of it is so that you can have a business that's giving, right?
Right.
So it's a really exciting topic.
Yeah. So we'll jump right in. Why? You just said this, but why is this a different way, and maybe even a backwards way of thinking about structuring your business and allocating cash?
Yep. Yeah, it is it is a little backwards, because I think for most people, you start your lemonade stand and you go out and you buy your ingredients and you set your prices and you start spending money on your stand and your salary or whatever it is that's involved in your business, and you say, okay, I'm going to sell this. I'm going to sell a certain amount of lemonade, but I got to have internet, and I have to have rent. I got to have this chair to sit in, and I have to have the rent for this space. Man, I sure hope I can generate a profit. And we all sort of relegate ourselves to the fact that we might not generate a profit, even years into business, right?
Right.
And so this whole
You see other these big companies that you hear about that haven't pulled a profit in forever, or they have never been profitable. So it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the bigger the business, a lot of times these investor-backed companies,
right.
They just live on investor cash, and they don't really generate a lot of profit. Which is, frankly, we can touch on that too, which is kind of the growth philosophy. But to get through this part. This kind of flips the equation on its head, because the Speiro Way says that instead of saying I'm going to sell a certain amount and get a certain amount of revenue, and I'm going to spend what I spend on fixed costs and cost of goods sold, and I'm going to see what I'm left with, and hopefully I have a profit. This flips it on its head, and it says, actually take the profit part of the equation and put it over on the left side of the equal sign and say, revenue minus profits equals expenses. Okay.
Yep.
And some people may have heard of this concept before. I mean, it is kind of out there, but for most people, it is foreign. I mean, you just don't normally think about your business this way. And so it's a really powerful exercise to start making expenses subservient to revenue minus profits. Yeah. And it shifts how you think about your business. It shifts how you think about your costs. It shifts how you think about salaries and rent and whether or not we need this desk this year.
Right.
And really drives you towards profitability, which of course then allows you to start giving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, totally. It's super easy as a business owner to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
No matter the size of the company.
Yeah.
I feel like almost in some ways, especially when you're small, because it's easy to feel like to compete with your competitors, other businesses in the area. You know, you're looking to draw in talent.
Yeah.
You want to look professional to your clientele. It becomes easy to justify and even feel completely obligated to spend money on the office space that's super nice, to have the best equipment, to have employee lunches paid for every day. I mean, these are the things that are like super easy to fall into.
Yeah.
And if you're structured like one of these venture-backed companies, for the both of us, that's familiar because we've both had SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And it's
growth
especially
at all costs.
known for growth at all costs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're in a position like that, it becomes even easier to just spend willy-nilly. I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
So this model helps you carve out a profit, and which should be exciting for anybody listening, especially if you're not profitable. Frankly, even if you are profitable, this will help you control by what percentage and maybe be a little more consistent because it comes first. But also it can just help you get the reins on your business and I mean, help it to no longer be a cash eating monster, because it requires you then to focus more heavily on expenses rather than just spending. And then whatever pops out the end, at the end of the month is what you have. So, two really good benefits.
And you just said something. I just want to touch on what you just said.
Yeah.
It's really it's actually a lot of a kind of a psychological exercise.
Yeah.
It is really interesting how you will just sort of be okay with spending money and you assume you have to.
Exactly.
You just sort of assume I need to spend this money, and until you make your expenses subservient to the revenue minus profits, it's funny. Money will just leak through the floor, through the bucket of your company. Your bucket seems to have a hole in it because you just find ways to spend it, because you just have this undisciplined approach, and you sort of sometimes just expect it. Like I just expect to spend this money.
And you also, this is a trap that I fell into. I've implemented this at my business currently, and I can speak to how it's been helpful in a lot of ways. But for me, one of the big benefits is like also simplification. So not only is this going to ensure you pull a profit and allow you to give out of your company and be generous, which is exciting. But so not only does it set things up in a way that require that to happen, and put the spotlight then on expenses, because it's like, whoa, we only have this much money left, and now all this money's going out the door. It can't be more than what I have left over. So it does both of those things, but it also simplifies. It simplifies in a lot of ways, because I think one of the reasons in my mind that money can just sort of fall out the cracks and just go unnoticed is like you might have really complex bookkeeping practices that are not either not requiring you to, or don't even allow you really to have a look at like the nitty gritty of, we're still paying for HubSpot and we're not even using it anymore. That probably wouldn't happen because it's a huge expense, but it can dumb that way. That can happen, which is why I point that out. But we're still paying for that gym membership for that employee that we let go. So that's cell phones. Those are notorious, right?
Yeah.
So I've also found that that's super helpful for us at Hero. Yeah. So let's keep pressing forward though. So this is what we've found about changing your practices and restructuring to follow what we're calling the Speiro Way, what we call it, and how we've decided for all of our portfolio companies to be structured by the way. But let's talk about how to implement the Speiro Way inside of a business.
Yeah.
So for the listeners that have a business or thinking about starting a business, how do you get started, and what does the structure look like so that you can get to this point that we're talking about, where you're guaranteeing a profit? So it's backwards. It's flipped backwards. We already talked about, you're prioritizing profit, and then after the fact, whatever's left over, you're using for expenses. How do you actually go about doing that?
So the mechanics of it really are they're simple. It does take a little bit of setup because you do need extra bank accounts. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever tried to start a bank account, you want to bring a toothbrush and a shaver because
you gotta be spending the night.
You might be there for a while. A business bank account, that is.
Yeah.
But it really isn't that hard once you get going. And this is something you want to, if you do have a bookkeeper or a controller, obviously they're going to be involved in this process with you. But the core premise of it is setting up at a minimum, I think 3 accounts probably, 4 maybe would be better, and up to 5 or 6, depending on how you want to structure the finances in your company. And what you do is you actually set up physical bank accounts for your operational expenses, payroll, a profit holding bank account, a giving account, things like that. And then those obviously tie back into your accounting system. We encourage this because you could technically do some bookkeeping jujitsu and like control some of this with accounts inside of your accounting system and just break up dollars and whatnot. But it's just nice and cut and dry, and it really is more clear when you can just really see those bank accounts and what they have in them. So
the same principle as like a personal savings account, and why that's nice. If you go throw money over into a different account, you have to consciously transfer that back out, and in doing so, violate your own rules.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and you're doing this now. You might be able to speak to it better than I can on just a ground level currently, but the beauty is like you have that operational account when you need to pay bills or things like that. It's coming out of that account, and you have a payroll account, and like, hey, I can make payroll this month. Sometimes that's a question when you're early in business. You're not sure. Sometimes it's a question even when you're late in business.
Right.
And the beauty is then you have this profit account that you are guaranteeing that you're putting money into every month. So you're saying, hey, I think we're going to do $10,000 in revenue. We want a 10% profit. You're actually going to move, as the revenue comes in, you're going to move $1,000 into your profit account. Well, guess what that means? You got $9,000 to operate on, and that's it. That's your payroll. That's your expenses. You're going to have to work from that. And then out of your profit account, you can slide over, what do you want to give out of your profits? 10% maybe 20, whatever, wherever you're at.
Yep.
And then you can say, well, I'm going to slide over $100 into our giving account. And then like, boom, you have already allocated $100 to giving, which is fantastic. Yep. And you watch that grow. And then you hopefully you watch the whole equation grow.
Right. Yeah. So you're picking percentages so a percentage for each bucket, if you will, buckets being those bank accounts. You're picking a percentage that you've decided is not going to hopefully go down. Hopefully over time in the right areas, like your profit account, your giving account, those percentages are going to go up. But you're assigning a percentage, and then when income hits the income account, you're then allocating that. You're allocating it appropriately at that point to each bucket.
Right.
So, and by the way, Jeff, just use the 10% number. If you're wondering what those percentages should look like, we do have some information on the Speiro website. Our blog post about the Speiro Way has some more information if you're interested about what those percentages might look like when you get started and then how they grow. If you're not doing this already and you're not profitable, there's a good chance you should start with like 1% allocation to your profit account.
Sure.
You don't just want to start where you desire to be.
Right. Like
someday.
You may have to get the machete out, to do this. Right. And which is why the exercise is so helpful. Like you may not be profitable. You might be like, I want to get profitable. I think I need to sell more. Well, you and I are high builder guys. We often say sales fixes everything. Right.
Right.
And it generally does. But sometimes you need to look at, stuff above the line and say, look, I might need to cut expenses, I might need to say, look, I can only sell so much.
Yep.
And I may need to take a hard look at critical things in my business, which is such an interesting exercise, by the way, because I think you know from being in business for years now, and I know from having multiple companies and exited multiple companies, there is almost always a way to fit in something that you want to fit in or something you want to mold your business around. You
become super motivated or forced.
Yes, super motivated or forced. And if you're disciplined, I think I heard you say, I think it was just a couple months ago, you renegotiated your Google GCP contract.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a result of this exercise.
Yeah.
By the way, we at Vet Hero have only had this implemented for so long. And yeah, things that because like the analogy is always, are you cutting fat or muscle or bone? The goal with this is to cut fat, but and you don't want to cut. You certainly don't want to cut at bone in your business, if at all possible. And it can feel like certain things are untouchables, or they're just not going to change until you're forced.
Yeah.
By doing something like this, to reevaluate what you're spending money on. So yeah, when you hit rock bottom and what's left is like your cogs.
Yeah.
Well, even your cogs probably can be your cost of goods sold can probably be negotiated because you have vendors that you're working with that typically are willing to work with you, right? And so, or in our case, like Jeff's pointing out with our Google Cloud hosting, because we're a SaaS company once again, that's an area where our dev team, they per department, they're not necessarily or at all focused on optimizing costs. And so your dev team or whatever department, they're not going to intuitively think, oh, we should be saving more money here and go and do it themselves. So that also might happen.
They might appreciate the resources, right? So your dev team's like, hey, I like this. We got lots of server resources.
Yeah, it's a nice cushion.
Yeah, it's a nice cushion for them, and frankly, more horsepower maybe sometimes equals uptime depending on the problem. But I think I think you bring up a good topic there, because it's really critical to get your people involved, because if you're and if you can, and this is part of your culture, if you're a giving business, right? And one of the Speiro values is at the top is generosity. So if you're baking that into your company, and whether you're doing that now or not, you get your people involved and you let them know, we want to be a generous company. And by the way, that almost always resonates extremely well with your people.
People love generosity.
Hey guys, we want to be more generous.
Regardless of your belief system.
Exactly. People do. Generally speaking, people want to help be generous, and it makes them feel good.
It should land.
Yeah, it should land. So if you get your people involved, it's kind of like profit sharing in a way. Like if you start profit sharing, all of a sudden your staff starts caring about what you're spending. Mm-hmm. Well, this is similar to that, in that if you get your people involved and you say, hey, we're trying to be more generous, we want to give out of this company, help us do that. Then they have eyes to see things that you might not necessarily see down in their department, depending on how big you are. If you're sole proprietor or you have a couple of employees, it's probably pretty obvious.
Right.
But if you have even more than like 15 or 20 employees, there's stuff they're handling or they have awareness of that you probably don't. And you say, we need to help shave costs. So it creates an awareness for them to get on board with cutting costs. We joke about the cell phone thing, but there's a myriad of things that you spend money on. How much are we paying the janitor? Is he using the name brand Clorox, or can we go to something else? There's so many ways, once you have eyes to see it, to actually trim costs inside your business. All for the idea that, A, you get a business that's you have a little more peace about running it because you're hopefully profitable at that point, and the biggest end game being generosity, being able to give.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for your interest in the Vertical Business Podcast. If you like what you heard today or you're just interested in all things business, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on bell notifications so you know when we're posting. We're typically posting 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, but you never know when we might not drop a short or something impromptu. And in addition to on YouTube here, you can also follow us or find us on Spotify as well as Apple Music, where we post our episodes as well. And then lastly, if you want to engage with us outside of the podcast, you can find us on our website at gospeiro.com. That is where you can subscribe to our newsletter and get access to our other content outside of the Vertical Business Podcast. So we're looking forward to seeing you there.